Hi, I'm Heidi Hewitt, AutoCAD Technical Marketing Manager at Autodesk, and I'm here with David Cohn, Consultant and Technical Publishing Manager with 4D Technologies. David, as you were conducting the productivity study for AutoCAD, did you discover anything else kind of new or interesting related to productivity?
Well, I did, because the original premise of the study was to simply look at AutoCAD. So we ran AutoCAD 2008 on an HP XW46 workstation, which would have been a workstation current at the time that AutoCAD 2008 was being used. And originally, well, all we were really looking at was then putting AutoCAD 2011 on the same machine. So that machine was running Windows XP. So we were running AutoCAD 2008 on a 2.5-year-old workstation, 3-year-old workstation running Windows XP, and then we put AutoCAD 2011 on the same workstation and timed it. And we saw about a 31% reduction in the time it took to accomplish the drawing tasks, those 8 drawing tasks. Well, then we said, okay, let's also upgrade the hardware. And HP and NVIDIA stepped up to the table on this and said, okay, we'll give you an HP Z200 workstation with a more modern NVIDIA graphics card. And this workstation will be running Windows 7. So I said, okay, now what benefits do I get from Windows 7? Well, you know, I looked at things like how long it took to boot up, and actually Windows 7 took a little bit less time to boot up, but then AutoCAD took a little longer to start up, so that was kind of a wash. But when I started looking at some of the other intangible things about working in Windows 7, I realized that there were things that we weren't measuring as part of the productivity study, that once a customer got used to having these features, they would probably see even more benefits. So, you know, in AutoCAD, when you're working with paper space layouts, we've already got on our taskbar at the bottom of the screen, we can hover over there and we can bring up a preview
right.
of those various layout spaces. Well, in Windows 7, if once you've got AutoCAD open down on the taskbar, you can move your cursor over the taskbar and you get a taskbar preview that shows you those same workspaces. So if you know you want to jump to a particular layout space, you can do it right there on the Windows taskbar. You don't have to first go into AutoCAD and then preview it in AutoCAD and jump to it. So in some ways, you know, that's going to make you more productive in your day-to-day work of just jumping to the drawing you want to work on.
Yeah. I have to say, I use that all the time.
See, and I'm not a Windows 7
it.
user right now. I'm still running Windows Vista. I can't wait. My next machine, obviously, is going to be running Windows 7. But I don't upgrade my machines that often. I'm like a typical AutoCAD user. You know, my hardware gets upgraded every 3 years or so. So my latest machine is still a Windows Vista machine. Another thing, jump lists. So again, you know, we're used to going to the Start button, and when we start AutoCAD from the Start button, we just start AutoCAD. But with Windows 7, when you go to start AutoCAD in Windows 7, you get this jump list. So you not only see AutoCAD in that list, but you see the last drawing you worked on. It shows you, you know, the same thing when you're opening up AutoCAD, you're going to see the most recent drawings and you can open
Go right to that drawing.
Well, now you can not only start AutoCAD, you can start AutoCAD and jump right to that drawing. So, I mean, this is one of these intangibles. You start your workday. You fire up your computer, you fire up AutoCAD, and you go right to the drawing you were working on yesterday, not as a multi-step process, but just one step.
Great.
So these are intangibles. We didn't measure them, but they're there.
Yeah.
When we start looking at things like hardware improvements, again, while they're not part of the productivity study, if you read the white paper, and now I'm talking about the white paper that also talked about the hardware, I also started running other benchmarks. So I said, you know, they're not part of the study, but let's quantify how much faster this machine is. So we ran things like the spec ViewPerf test. And so the study looks at how much faster the graphics card is. Looked at things like AutoCAD rendering. Is AutoCAD rendering faster in 2011 than in 2008? No. But more modern hardware now, we're dealing with a Core i7 processor or a Core i5 processor where we've got multiple CPU cores, whereas the older processor might have only had dual cores. Now we're looking at quad core with hyper-threading. So when you start rendering in AutoCAD, and so one of the tests I do is a rendering test where I take, and this is actually a model that you gave me years ago, and I've incorporated it now into the tests I do for Desktop Engineering Magazine. I render your kitchen.
I was going to ask, is it the house?
It's your house.
my kitchen. Really?
You gave me the drawing. You gave me permission to use it. So I now have a scripted benchmark. It runs inside of AutoCAD. It uses your house. I've made it available to HP and NVIDIA, so it's out in the public domain now. And it times how long it takes to render that at full presentation at 1280 by 1024, and it's an AutoCAD script file, so it does it 6 times and then averages it. Well, if it took 16 minutes to render it in AutoCAD on a single core processor, it drops to a little more than 8 minutes as soon as you move to a dual core. It drops to 4 minutes now when you move to a quad core. Well, now using an i7 processor where you've got a quad core processor with hyper-threading, so it's really behaving like 8 cores, that rendering is now getting down to somewhere between 1 and 2 minutes to complete a rendering. So again, if you do renderings as part of what you do day to day in AutoCAD,
that adds up
you
quickly.
definitely want to invest in a Core i5 or i7 processor. Maybe even if you do a lot of renderings, get a computer that's got 2 sockets, so now you've got 2 quad-core processors. Because then when you render, you've got the equivalent of 16 processors, and because the rendering engine that's inside of AutoCAD, that Mental Ray renderer, is a multi-threaded process. It will take that rendering and divide it up across multiple cores. So these were intangibles that, while not part of the productivity per se, the study per se, they're talked about in the productivity study white paper as things to consider when you are upgrading.
Great, and that productivity study is available on Autodesk.com.
It is available on the Autodesk website. It's available on my website, and I'm going to be speaking about it later in the week at AU.
What is your website? Can you go ahead and
yeah, my website is dscohn.com, so my first initial, middle initial, last name.com.
Great. All right. Well, definitely take a look at that productivity study. Thanks, David.
You're welcome.